Hi, Nicole. Great to be here.
Good to see you. So we're here today with Knot Aman. His Facebook group is Activists for Domestic Violence and Family Law Reform. So tell me a little bit about yourself and your group.
Well, I've been through the family law process that finished a couple of days ago.
You have a case?
Yeah, I had a case. The case is closed now.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been through the mill and found out what works and what doesn't, mostly about what doesn't. Really, I needed to start the family law case because my son was being brainwashed effectively, and my role as a parent was being undermined. So that it is possible to tell a lie to a child and have that child believe that lie and decide to side with one parent or the other. It's also quite crazy because men and women do this sort of stuff about equally. So for feminists to say it doesn't exist and men's rights people to say it does exist, really, there's no, it's not even strategic on either of their parts. So women are affected by this as much as men. Part of a spectrum of control. So it's both child abuse and domestic violence. Here in Australia, we've got some very good researchers researching that area. Obviously less than in the US, simply because you've got a lot more people over there happening here. Unfortunately, the courts are very, very slow to accept it, and there's lots of people involved who have a particular ideology that either support it or oppose it, and everybody will grab it as a weapon just to suit their cause. Domestic violence probably comes from the US. But parental alienation is using children as a tool to control the other parent.
Gotcha.
And there is some good research being done here in Australia by the University of Tasmania. So there is a big campaign here to try to have that recognised as, let's just say, unacceptable behaviour, regardless of what gender is doing that.
Did you say that's what your Facebook group is about?
My Facebook group is more about the reform of the family law system and reform of domestic violence policy.
Which would include the parental alienation, right?
Yes, there's a whole range of domestic violence, you know, from men raping women to homosexual men beating each other up to lesbians sort of, you know, destroying each other's character amongst their friends, you know, to men being victims of physical control or financial control. There's a massive spectrum and so many different areas of it, all of it being unacceptable and basically one person trying to destroy the other. And it's all very political. There's the debate about, oh no, we're women and women can't do bad things, or no, we're men and men can't do bad things. Obviously, that's rubbish.
Your group talks about that and tries to focus on reform unilaterally.
Yeah, across the board. We've probably got about 40% women, 60% men. I try very, very hard to ensure that it's neither a a feminist group or a crazy men's rights ideological women bashing group. And it's just not constructive to say, let's get all this gender together and bash the other side. Let's just say that that's not good for anybody's mental health, and it's certainly not good for kids.
So what happened in your case?
Well, I see that your group's called Success Stories. And from one particular perspective, we could say that I don't have a success story at all. But what I've found is that things aren't always as they appear on the surface. So a bit of a quick rundown. After 3 years in the family court system, with allegations of violence from both sides, both me to her and her to me, with police being involved and bringing charges in other courts, and then police backing off and saying, oh no, we've got no evidence, and lies. The case finally came to an end where I agreed that she would have sole parental responsibility, which means that my son lives with her, but she's held accountable to ensure that I have a regular and increasing relationship with my son, which, based on her track record, she's never been held accountable for that before. And so that is something that I can at least maintain a relationship with my son, grow that relationship.
So that's your success story right there.
Yeah. So one of the things that many people, lawyers particularly, have said in family law, and I agree with, which is that it's the whole concept of winning a family law case shows a fundamental misunderstanding. I don't know how things are in the US there, but here in Australia, it's all about the parents have no rights at all. The right belongs to the child. And so if the father or the mother want to say, hey, what about my rights? It's all about, no, what about the child's rights to have a relationship with you? And that's very much where I'm focused. So I ensured that his right to have a relationship with me is protected. And so that's good enough for me.
Well, that's wonderful news. I'm happy to hear that you'll have more time with your son. And that must be a big deal to you.
Yeah.
What reforms do you think should be made to the family court to get better outcomes for children?
That's a big one. There have been a lot of initiatives here in Australia to try and fix the family law, fix the family court system. They've made a number of recommendations and they're trying to fix it. Some of those I agree with.
What would be one of those?
So basically it comes down to accountability. There are a number of problems that need addressing. One of those is that anybody can say, I'm terrified for the safety of the child, so therefore I'm going to break these court orders and just protect that child. Now that sometimes is legitimate. And sometimes it's just a fabrication. There is no danger to the child at all.
There's no evidence of danger.
Well, that's something that then goes to the court. But what any one person can say, oh, I'm terrified. of what harm could happen. And sometimes, absolutely, that's true. And a protective parent should be able to break a court order under those circumstances. But in other cases, that's not true at all. Unfortunately, even when it is not true, there is very little accountability for anybody who breaks court orders. And I think the legal system here has just gotten sick of enforcing its own orders because everybody's breaking them. And that just encourages more people to break them if there are no penalties. So enforcing the authority of the court, not allowing people to have contempt for the court, and not allowing the court to have contempt for itself by not even enforcing its own orders. That's a good start.
I hear you. I'm in family court too in the US, and I'm not sure that if those are the same issues we're dealing with in my own courtroom, but I hear what you're saying. So those
another big area here is that we have what we call family report writers, which tend to be social workers or somebody who interviews both parents and interviews the child and says, well, you know what I think this.
Some more information that could be true or not true.
Yeah, the problem we've got here is that normally those people will have gotten into that position by having an ideology. So sometimes that ideology is men's rights activists. It doesn't matter what the father has done or been accused of doing. The father's obviously the best parent. And that cannot always be true. It's just not, right? You cannot have somebody with an ideology that says that's always the case. It's just not. And equally so, there are many women who get into that position and have a feminist agenda and will say, well, no, the mum is always right and the mum is always the best person. That obviously can't be true. There's got to be at least one person on the planet where the mum is not the best person. So there's no accountability for these people to say, well, let's listen to the audio recordings of those sessions, allow a judge to listen to them and compare that with what was reported and said, hey, that person did not ever say that. Where did you get this from? Or based on what you've heard, why did you just ignore that? You know, that's clearly negligent. These people need to be held accountable appropriately to the court rather than just being allowed to make some recommendation and then the judge saying, well, hey, I don't know, that sounds like a good idea.
I hear you. We have what's called guardian ad litems out here, and yeah. I've had my own situation with where I disagree with my guardian ad litem. I'm not sure where he gets his I feel like bias, and it's been difficult working with somebody who is court ordered something I didn't ask for and I don't think my son needs. So I can totally relate to how frustrating that might be to get a report that doesn't substantiate what's happening.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, to be balanced, probably everybody in a dispute will accuse the guardian ad litem in your case, or family report writer in my case, will accuse them of bias towards the other side. You've got to expect that. I think the reform comes in where those accusations can be checked independently. Just because you might, let's say we have the same person and we've got a shared child. We're on different continents, right? But, you might say, no, they're biased towards the dad. And I might say, no, they're biased towards the mum. And, well, all of the evidence might go to an independent person and say, look, I can't really see much bias either way. They said horrible things about you and horrible things about me. And, well, it's probably pretty horrible towards both of you. So, but there are certainly cases, and that might be the case here. Maybe you got an outrageously misogynistic person deciding that no matter what you've done, no matter what the truth of the allegations are, you're a horrible mum. And the same for me. So we just need a system to check that.
Thank you. What are things that you look for when determining whether someone is a victim or perpetrator of domestic and family violence?
That's one of the most important questions that I consider. I am an activist, and because I'm working in that field, there are lots of people who will jump up and down and say, oh, I'm a victim. Now, I can read between the lines and I can see that many of them aren't. Some of the behaviour I see is, has all of the signs of violence. If somebody's being violent in a Facebook group and they're saying, oh, no, I'm a victim, if they're being violent towards other people or people of the same gender or opposite gender, that's a sign, all right? You can't then go and say, oh, no, they called me violent. It's like, well, yeah, I just looked at your posts. Yeah, you are violent. So sometimes these are women, sometimes they're men. But when I'm talking to somebody, I look at that sort of stuff. What have they said? How do they come across? Are they just abusing everybody? Are they just angry towards everybody? Do they try as best as they possibly can, according to their own awareness, to be understanding and present both sides of the argument and say, well, look, my ex said this about me and I can sort of see his or her point of view, but, I think she's mistaken. I see it from this perspective. That's far more balanced than my ex is just an abusive narcissist. Well, I've been accused of being a narcissist before. Because of that, I figure that narcissists accuse other people of being narcissists. So since I don't believe I am, I'm not going to accuse anybody of being a narcissist because I'm not a psychologist, a psychiatrist. But, just hurling weapons at the other side is,
that's pretty.
At very least, it's not constructive.
Right. So it's pretty common, and you think it sounds like it gets out of hand, and so there is imbalance, and the one that gets friction is the child. He's the one that doesn't pay off for.
Yeah.
What areas? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So basically, summarizing that, it's like, is somebody telling half the story, or do they say, look, and in this situation, I just lost my temper and I hit her. I had a guy talking to me the other day, and he said, I slapped her in the face. And so somebody telling me that doesn't mean I knew it. You're an abusive bastard. No, what that tells me is that they're able to self-reflect. They're able to say, look, I'm no angel. I've done some bad things, but these are the other things that have happened to me. And for me, providing the whole story means that somebody's committed to the truth. And so is one of those signs that somebody's not out there to say, hey, I'm an angel, I'm a victim, and, you know, hey, yeah, we need to go out and get all these bitches, or if they're a male, right? Or if they're a woman, you know, men are bastards, we need to bring them all down, shoot them all.
Right. In what areas do you believe domestic violence system fails both men, women, and children? So the domestic violence system, you're saying the court, is that right?
Well, I'm not sure how it works there in the US, but we have here invariably the police get called, and you know there was an argument or something, or somebody hit somebody. Police get called, and normally somebody takes out a restraining order against somebody else. It can be done privately, but often the police are involved. Now, the thing is that normally only happens for physical violence. That will never happen in a situation where a man or a woman is controlling all the money and saying, no, let's say you can't dress like that to go out. Normally, the story there is told with the guy telling the woman that, you know, I don't want you to be seen like that. But, you know, similar things have happened to me. No, you need to get a haircut. No, you can't go out wearing that. You'll embarrass me or whatever. You know, it cuts both ways. For that sort of stuff, it doesn't happen immediately. Nobody is going to, after the 18th comment this week about, no, I don't want you to go out like that, suddenly call the police. The police aren't going to intervene and say, well, I think this is the 15th time you've said that this week, and that seems like a controlling behaviour, and cumulatively that's destructive to the other person, and that's controlling, and that's not appropriate behaviour. You need to be restrained from doing that. And so we're going to take you to court and get the court to restrain you from doing that.
This is
what you not going to happen.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. If you get somebody turning up to a police station with a bleeding face or a stab wound, or saying, I've been raped, yes, it'll happen. But that's a very, very small fraction of domestic violence, and normally is something that happens after years and years and years and years of the other types of control.
And only after documentation and police reports and court hearings. Yes, I know. I've been involved in it myself, so.
Yeah, so the way we're responding to domestic violence just doesn't work. And in fact, it inflames things. Even when, so my partner was stabbed 4 times. My partner's a woman, I'm straight. She was stabbed 4 times by a guy. Before she was stabbed, she was hauled into the police. The police were concerned for her. They said, look, you know, this guy seems to be really bad. We've just called him and said, no, he's going to be restrained, not allowed anywhere near you. That, of course, really made him angry. They then said to her, do you feel comfortable to go home? She said, yeah. Now, they knew that he'd been violent in the past, but she didn't. So they said, okay, toddle off, go home then. then he was waiting in a house and stabbed her 4 times.
Mm.
Now, you know, the police totally failed to protect her. She was in a what they call a red flag meeting. She'd been red flagged as a woman in danger from a dangerous guy.
What is the term?
Well, it's just a police term here. But you get a red flag on on a person's profile.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, hey, this is a woman in danger.
Right,
okay.
Gotcha.
So they called her in and said, you know, are you safe? Are you safe? She said, oh, yeah, I feel confident. I'll go home. Well, she wasn't safe. The fact is, they had the last 10 years of his history and his police reports. They had that information and she didn't.
Mm.
They could have said, you might think that.
Wow.
And we can't tell you what he's done. That would be a breach of confidentiality, but do not go home.
That makes the police dangerous.
Yes.
Sounds like.
Yeah, the system is broken. It's not protecting any men from women, and it's not protecting most women from men.
Mm.
And it's certainly not protecting any same-sex relationship couples from each other.
Which spills over into divorce, violence there, and gotcha.
Yeah. So it's broken. You know, it also doesn't. Police intervention also doesn't work where you've got that parental alienation, where, let's say, a mum or a dad said, hey kid, although you may not know it, your mum's been using drugs and she's spent all your pocket money on getting drugs. You know, I'm really sorry. You know, the dad could say that, the mum could say that. The child's not meant to know if it's true or not. But for something like that, if the other person finds out about it, okay, I'm calling the police. Well, the police are going to say, well, so you say that you heard secondhand from your child that the other parent said this to them. What if you were a police officer, what would you say after the 30th call of this? What can they do?
Mm.
You know,
what would you think if you can't go to the police? What's your best options?
The best options, educating people, raising awareness of all of the different types of domestic violence. Not just the obvious ones, changing the whole, let's say, marketing and awareness of domestic violence to away from this woman was murdered or this woman was raped or this woman was stabbed. Because although all those things happen and it is horrific, 95%, if we just stick with women here, 95% of women, that will happen after, what, 5 years of controlling behaviour that has left them trapped.
Mm-hmm.
Totally financially controlled,
Mm-hmm.
emotionally manipulated,
Mm-hmm.
possibly raped within a marriage,
Mm-hmm.
You know, low-level violence, brainwashing, gaslighting. You know, that
in my head. That's what I've had to go through. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's more about educating not just the general public, but individuals in those situations so that they can wake up. It took me a long time to wake up saying, hey, actually this behaviour is really, really not good.
Mm.
And so many people that I've talked to, both men and women, say, you know, it took me a long time to realise that this was what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of abuse and control just sneaks up on people.
Mm-hmm.
So it needs some really, really strong educational messages and moving away from the ideology, which is all men are violent and likely to murder you and all women are innocent. That is not education. That's just gender politics. That doesn't actually help anybody. That inflames the situation. It will make the men angry and the women more empowered to get away with things. It's just not the solution. It is the solution if you want to advance the number of people in the industry, but and you know, keep the problem going. But it's not the solution. It's not the solution to loving relationships and kids being protected.
Mm. So that leaves us with, what are major challenges you're experiencing right now and how are you handling them? Is that you? Yeah.
You did have a bit of an echo.
Yeah. What are major challenges you're experiencing right now and how are you handling them?
Major challenges are rebuilding my life after 10 years of abuse, basically being told I'm completely worthless, that I'm not a useful dad, not able to be a dad, not capable of looking after myself or my son, and rebuilding myself and rebuilding my relationships that have been quite deliberately destroyed. So that includes my mental health, looking after that. I am diagnosed with PTSD. This isn't actually often there's complex PTSD used, but I'm not diagnosed with that. I'm diagnosed with PTSD and depression and anxiety. And both of those things seem to be very quite obvious when somebody's abused for a long time. So I need to rebuild that, and reinforcing my parenting skills, my assertiveness in holding accountable the people who are deliberately undermining the relationship with my kids.
How does that look?
Well, I am about to bring an intervention order against my own parents, unfortunately.
Really?
Yeah. In a family law dispute, there's basically, I think it's in the context of narcissistic abuse, you get the concept of flying monkeys. And those are people who will say, all right, who's got the power? Who's going to win the battle? I'll just go on their side and do whatever they want me to do. And that way I'll be on the winning side. Now that's, and so they actually assist abuse. That's been the case by my parents here. They've worked with my son's mum. They've actively assisted her, passed information on, which is later end up used as a weapon against me. And I'll be providing proof of that and requiring some accountability for their actions. But basically saying that they will be required to notify me when they make contact with my children, because I've asked them to do that but they insist on going behind my back, not even advising me of the time that they're arranging with my kids.
Oh, that sounds very just concerning. And
Yeah, yeah, that's. I would think common respect would say, "Hey, you're our son, and we would like to spend time with our grandson. And just a heads up, we've arranged that with your ex, and we're picking them up on this time to go and do this." Particularly if I've requested that they always do that, for somebody to say, no, you can't make us. Just seems to be a little bit of a distorted view about what exactly their role is. I'm certainly not preventing a relationship between my son and them. I am insisting that I am able to fulfill my role as a parent that is aware of what's happening with my kids.
Wonderful. I think that's great to be proactive in that way, and just cleaning up the garbage, so to speak, the riffraff, and focusing on what matters, which is non-bias attention to your son.
Yeah. And another thing that I find particularly challenging and ironic, actually, is that as part of this family court case, I've said, well, here's the evidence of what the mum has done to me. I mean, that's what everybody does. She'll present her evidence, I present my evidence. And I'll say, well, I think that this is abuse. And with the outcome being, well, look, your son's going to live permanently with his mum anyway. I'm being sent to, in the words of a ad litem or family report writer, adjust my attitude towards the other parent. Now, on one hand, I see that it's certainly not conducive to have a good cooperative relationship when two parents hate each other. On the other hand, accurately calling something child abuse when a child is being told lies is not something that I can suddenly feel good about and consider was in the best interests of my son.
Right.
So, but anyway, I'm required to go and get re-education by the court. So that will be very interesting.
So that's the change that you're doing, the change that you're going to do.
Well, I'm required to do that before I get more contact with my son. So that will be interesting. I cynically see that as, if I become trained in feminist theory, then I can have all the access to my son I want. But if I insist that well, no, I don't quite accept that, then no. I'm obviously dangerous for my son. I think that's a little bit of a polarized view, but I'm going to try hard to adjust my attitude.
That's wonderful, and I'd love to see you in a little couple months, see how things are going for you. Yeah. And then as far as your Facebook group, that's where you do your activism mostly, or?
Oh, well, my Facebook group is basically an information exchange. We've got over 500 people in it, mostly from Australia. Some from the UK, some from the US, but it's mostly an Australian thing. It's more that the people involved in that are sharing information about the initiatives that they are doing outside and privately. So it's an information exchange. Unfortunately, it can be a bit of a whinge session. And so I need to...
A what session?
A whinge session where, you know, the guys complain about, these feminists, they're doing these horrible things. And the women complain.
Caught wind of that a little bit.
Yeah, you've seen it. I know, yeah. I know. Look, everybody whinging and doing nothing is not constructive. Mm-hmm. I would love to have a bunch of women's rights activists just as much as a bunch of men's rights activists focusing on reform of the areas that don't work for women, mm-hmm. just as much as the areas of reform that don't work for men.
So not necessarily within the family court system.
Well, it's also about domestic violence. It's basically, how can we fix both systems to just get rid of ideology, mm-hmm. and look at, okay, how do we protect people? Mm-hmm. How do we protect children? And how do we cut the crap and stop trying to attack each other and score points, and actually say, hey, we need to do these things because if we don't, more people will die.
Right. Well, that's proactive, and I appreciate it. I appreciate you doing that. I have my own ideas about connection and voting, changing laws myself, and I know that we've been talking and working kind of together with those ideas, with kind of coalition style thoughts. And that's exciting to me. So what's your final thoughts?
Final thoughts. My final thought really is probably one about me. How can I continue to fight the good fight for both men and women, but mostly children, not ignore the bad things that have happened to me and have happened to my women friends and my men friends, not ignore it, but also not become bitter and twisted and just go into a great big whinge cycle and get overwhelmed and resigned to, it's all screwed. Nobody can do anything. Nobody wants to hear that. It's not fun. It doesn't make anybody fun to be around. I don't want to be that person. That person isn't going to be effective at changing anything. So the challenge for me is, how do I stay positive, motivated, effective, and upbeat while not ignoring all of the really, really difficult stuff that needs to be acknowledged? If you've got an answer or any tips, or any of your people have got an answer or any tips, please let me know.
All right, Knot. Thank you very much. And will you say your Facebook group's name again? It's called Activist.
Well, its official name is Activist for Domestic Violence and Law Reform, open round bracket, ADVFLR, close round bracket. But the easiest way to find it is whatever Facebook group you've got. It's facebook.com/groups/endalldv.
Wonderful. Well,
End all DV. And on Facebook, I'm Knot Aman, KNOT space AMAN. And so, yeah, just connect with me. I'll be your friend. Even if you're a feminist and even if you're a feminist and want equality and to stop this crap to everybody, well, you're my ally.
Nice.
I don't care what you call yourself.
Nice. Thank you.
Great working with you and continuing to work with you, Nicole.
Yeah, it's been nice. All right, well, I'll see you on the other side and we'll catch up in a few.
Okay.
All right, take care.